Pointed wing root glove transforms an airflow into a powerful air vortex. A vortex creates a stable vacuum zone above the wing. Differential pressure grows, causing a significant increase of lift force. With an angle of attack increase, the vortex intensity grows. This allows an aircraft to fly at higher angles of attack without losing its stability or stalling into a spin. This directly leads to higher maneuverability. For example, a turn or a combat turn can be performed more aggressively. During such maneuvers, the vortex intensity is so big that a vortex can be seen with the naked eye. It's time to have a look at what was happening with the new American fighter. In July 1972, the aircraft called F-15 Eagle performed its first flight. The F-15 had a traditional layout. Therefore, the Su-27 aerodynamic layout had advantages and was expected to be superior to the U.S. fighter. But Su-27 had to meet a competition in the USSR first. The choice had to be made between the Yak-45, MiG-29, and Su-27. It's worth mentioning that the Sukhoi Design Bureau presented another project of a fighter with traditional layout. The Sukhoi designers preferred their new layout to the traditional one, but they couldn't predict the opinion of the military authorities on the issue. But the future of the new layout was so promising that at the next stage of the tender, the MiG-29 took a new shape. It's worth stressing that it was planned to choose only one project. But later, some essential correction and changes were made into the plan. This situation somehow looked similar to the one they had in the US. Designing their F-15 aircraft, the Americans realized that sometimes it was not reasonable to use such an expensive aircraft. Therefore, in addition to the F-15, it was decided to develop an aircraft which would be cheaper and lighter. In future, this aircraft will be known as the F-16. In the Soviet Union, the concept of an advanced fighter was also revised. Eventually, the Mikoyan Design Bureau had to develop a lightweight fighter. Heavy fighter development was the task for the Sukhoi Bureau. As for the Yakovlev Design Bureau, they didn't participate in this tender any longer. The decision to design two different fighters was quite logical. It wasn't copying of the American conception at all. In the USSR, they conducted certain research on this issue. The results were nearly the same. Lightweight fighters such as the MiG-29 were required to provide air defense over a battlefield. Heavy fighters like the Su-27 had to win air superiority operating over enemy territories. That would ensure successful combat mission of a frontline attack aircrafter. It's worth mentioning that in the process of the aircraft building, the question whether we were right in our decision for the two aircraft types was continuously emerging. By the time when Dmitry Ustinov became Minister of Defense, he raised this issue at the moment when we were on the state flight tests. Anyway, we stood this strong administrative pressure and proved that it was necessary to build two aircraft. They were the MiG-29 and the Su-27. In 1974, Naum Chernyakov was appointed the aircraft chief designer. At that time, the name Su-27 was classified, and the aircraft was developed under T-10 designation. From the early 70s, a lot of tests and experiments were conducted under this project. These included wind tunnel simulation, tests on full-scale flying models, test bed for the aircraft systems development, and many others. The Soviet leading aviation institutes were also involved in this project. With the development of Soviet aviation, more companies and enterprises became involved in the new aircraft creation process. Among those were different design bureaus and research organizations of various trends. Speaking about that time, it was normal and very intensive work. I can't say that it was easy, as it was very intense, but quite normal work to do. When we first saw the T-10-1 aircraft mock-up, we were very much impressed with its unusualness, aerodynamic configuration, and with all of its shape. The aircraft looked like a bird. Without any exaggeration, I would say in those years I was looking forward to a new working day because it was interesting to work. Now there is some talk about stagnation period. Stagnation might have been somewhere, but in the defense industry, we were in the state of war. We worked under wartime schedule. That was an epoch when employees of the defense industries were leaders and were supported, including financial support first. There were some difficult situations, however. We were not pushed and beaten, but were given help to set something right. That was a great era. The objective was clear. The Soviet fighter had to be better than the American one. Soviet better than American was sort of official slogan in the USSR. Now let's go back to the 70s. The Olympic Games in Munich in 1972. The Soviet athletes had a goal to win 50 gold medals and to outstrip the Americans in this competition. No sooner said than done. The Soviets won 50 gold medals. Those victories were unforgettable. The USSR men's basketball team won their first Olympic gold medals by beating the US team in a challenging and dramatic game. Athlete Valery Borisov won 100 meters and 200-meter runs and cut short domination of American sprinters. The Soviet power must be kept high. In 1975, everything was ready to build prototype aircraft. In 1976, the Council of Ministers of the USSR issued a corresponding decree. In spring 1977, the first T-10 prototype was ready for flight tests. Unfortunately, Pavel Sukhoi didn't live to the moment to see the aircraft completely built. On September 15, 1975, this outstanding designer passed away. His close associate, Yevgeny Ivanov, took over. Here is the video of Tushino Air Parade in 1948. Pavel Sukhoi is in the middle. Yevgeny Ivanov is on the left. The Su-27 chief designer was also replaced. In 1976, this position was taken over by Mikhail Simonov. May 20th, 1977. Flight Research Institute Airfield in Zhukovsky. The test pilot Vladimir Ilyushin is getting ready to take the new fighter up into the sky. Vladimir Ilyushin is hero of the Soviet Union, the Sukhoi Design Bureau senior test pilot, and a son of the famous Soviet aircraft designer. He tested many Sukhoi aircraft before that flight. Had he got a feeling that this aircraft would become one of the best fighters in the world? Before this aircraft, I flew 142 modifications of different aircraft. I always had a feeling that I was a kind of smarter than the machine, capable of doing more than it could. But the things were quite different on that 143rd. It proved to be smarter than I was. As soon as the aircraft took off from the concrete, taking the aircraft into the air for the first time, I realized that this aircraft could do more than the pilot. To make full use of its wonderful capabilities, it's necessary to improve my skills. It was an aircraft that could be awaited all life long. For the sake of this aircraft, it was worth becoming a pilot. But it was a very long way to make this aircraft the best world's fighter. By the time of the first test flight, despite all the technical innovations, it was evident that this aircraft could not be superior to its American rival. The F-15 already showed its potential. In 1975, the specially arranged aircraft set several rate-of-climb world records. During the Su-27 development, it became obvious that the aircraft would be too heavy. Its weight characteristics were exceeded because of heavy electronic equipment. Pavel Sukhoi was right when he doubted that electronics industry could provide up-to-date equipment. Missile armament designers also fell outside the limits. The engines were only in development stage, but it was clear that they could consume more fuel than expected, and therefore more fuel will be required on board the aircraft. There were also problems with the aircraft aerodynamic parameters. During the first flight test, it turned out that angles of attack higher than 10, the aircraft started to shake. In such a situation, it was useless to talk about the Soviet fighter superiority.